Part 1 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. First things first, we gotta give this thing a bath. So we roll out the Harbor Freight Special pressure washer, hook it all up, turn that baby on, and get to rinsing. This thing has years of baked on moss, dirt, and grime. And after what seemed like literally hours of rinsing, we're on to my favorite part. The good old foam cannon. Hell yeah, brother. I have no idea what it is about this thing, but it is so satisfying to use. I mean, just look at that. And then a ton of scrubbing. The paint on this thing was filthy. I literally ruined this cheap wash mitt. I mean, just look at this water, yuck. And then on to one final rinse, and ta-da! Well, it's definitely not perfect, but it's a huge improvement. And now it'll be a clean eyesore for my neighbors to look at. Thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to follow and check out the merch link in my bio. Part 2 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. The wash job from my last video turned out great, but now it's time to turn our attention to the interior. So it's time to glove up and get the vacuum out. The first step of this process is to remove all the junk and clutter from the interior, and that includes everything under the bench seat, so it's got to come out. Not to mention the standard bench seat's going to be replaced with racing seats later on. So after removing 4 12mm nuts, the bench seat comes right out. And just look at all that junk that was hiding under there. After removing the big stuff, we vacuumed it up, and now we can remove this nasty carpet. But I wasn't super glad about what was underneath. Yeah, that's rust. I mean, good news is now there's floor ventilation, and finally I vacuumed up all the rust scale off of what was left of the floor pan. And that's a job done. It's already starting to look like a Nascar truck. Thanks guys for watching, and don't forget there's a merch link in my bio, which is going to help fund this whole build, and the design's pretty sick. Here's part 3 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. Next thing we got to do is make room for the new transmission, so that means out with the old. The first order of business here is jacking the truck up and putting it on jack stands so we have more room under the truck. First thing that we got to remove is the shifter. It's just 2 12mm bolts and it comes right out. And next is the drive line. This one's just 4 more bolts and nuts, and then it drops down, and then it slides right out. I almost forgot to drain the trans oil, and let me tell you guys, this stuff was gooey. Since I already had the engine out, just 3 more bolts for the trans mount, and then while supporting the front of the trans, I pulled out the back and just set it down on the ground. Well, it kind of fell. And I'll tell you what, this was a pretty light transmission. Now with the trans out of the way, I just decided to cut out the rest of the exhaust, since we won't be needing it. And now in the next video, I think we're going to be cleaning up this engine bay. Well, that's a job done, and we sure did make a mess. Thanks guys for watching, and don't forget, merch link in my bio. Part 4 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. Announcement guys, at 200,000 followers, I'm giving away a t-shirt and a hoodie. All you have to do is sub to my YouTube, follow me on TikTok, and comment on this video. So what I did today was remove unnecessary items from the engine bay, such as this old bungee cord, to make room for the new 5.3 LM7. So I started off by removing all these dry rotted rubber hoses that won't be used with the new engine. I then removed all the small detachable wiring harnesses that connected to the old engine's electronics, since we'll no longer be using them. That means this coil has got to go. And don't worry, I'm saving all these old parts in case somebody needs them. So after removing all 3 wires and the 2 mounting screws, it comes right out. I then removed the parking brake cable and lever assembly, since I probably won't be using this in the future anyways. And lastly, I removed the clutch cable and the clutch pedal, since the truck's going to be an automatic, because automatics are faster. Now, I definitely didn't get everything that I wanted to done today, but that's okay, because the weekend just started. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for part 5. Part 5 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. First thing we're doing today is draining this bad gas. We got to remove that line and the positive terminal for the stock fuel pump. And the ground is actually just hooked here to the frame. So I grabbed some jumper cables, a spare battery, and a bucket. Then slid it under to catch all that stale dyno juice, pulled off the soft line, and hooked up the jumper cables to the negative and positive of the stock fuel pump. Then up to my battery. At first the pump was barely dribbling fuel out, but then it caught a second wind and started putting out like your mother on Sunday after church. And after it was all empty, I poured what looked like dehydrated old man urine into a suitable container. I then did some deadlifts with the truck and decided it was time to take off the topper. It was just 6 really hard to get 2 bolts. I had to get fairly creative to loosen them all by myself. And once all 6 bolts were removed, I literally had to peel the topper off. And finally, I He-Manned it off by myself. Thanks guys for watching. Stay tuned for part 6. Part 6 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. So in part 2 we stripped the interior. Well, I missed a couple things, but we're going to take care of that right now. I started off with the door panels by removing the window crank, door handle bezels, and the door pull. And after a couple hidden screws on the bottom, it just pops right off. I also ground down some sharp edges. I then removed the sill plates and the ugly blue molding, and then went on to remove the old crusty dash. This thing literally broke out in chunks. I also had to remove the glove box so that I didn't break it taking the rest of the dash off. I then reinstalled it, and look how that closes. Of course, wouldn't be complete without a nasty love sticker, merch link in bio. And then these ugly blue kick panels. I then had to take off the visors, and this crumbly little light. It literally fell apart. And lastly, these thingies. And then finish it off by cutting out the headliner. And now the very last order of business was to remove all these seat belts, because who needs those, right? It's really starting to look like a NASCAR truck. Stay tuned for part 7. Welcome to part 7 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. So next thing on the to-do list is to get rid of some of this rust and coat the floors. I got all my PPE on, and it's time to start wire brushing with the drill. I wire brushed most of the floor to prepare the surface for rust encapsulator. Wire brush also helped to get rid of a bunch of stuck on dirt and grime. And then my drill died, so then I guess I was done with the wire wheel. I then vacuumed the whole floor, blew all the dust out with compressed air, and then vacuumed one more time. Next I sprayed the entire floor with wax and grease remover, agitated it, and then wiped it off with a rag. Prepping the surface like this is a very vital step so that the rust encapsulator has something to stick to. I blew it out one more time, then filled my spray gun with the rust encapsulator. I then laid it down on the rusty areas, and this stuff takes 48 hours to cure before it can be painted. And while that started to cure, I sprayed the back half of the truck with a different type of rust encapsulator. And in 48 hours, we'll be able to paint this bad boy. Thank you everyone for watching, and stay tuned for part 8. Part 8 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. I'm now putting extended version videos on my YouTube channel A to Z Performance. So let's get started. We're going to clean out this engine bay and finish up the floors from the last video. I got out the pressure washer and it's time to get rinsing. I then broke out the uber satisfying foam cannon and started scrubbing. And I even hopped in the engine bay. After a lot of degreaser and scrubbing, it started to come off. And getting all the grease off this belly pan was super satisfying. And here's what it looks like after. A huge improvement. So I turned my attention inside the cab where I wiped it all down with a tack cloth. I coated the rust treatment with a rust sealer. And guess what everyone? I'm going to start buying parts for the build on Monday. I'm going to start off with buying the Ford 9-inch and then the engine swap mount kit. Now back to your program. I finished off the floor pan with a white Rust-Oleum paint. Didn't turn out perfect, but I'm very happy with it. Thanks guys for watching and stay tuned for part 9. We might start adding parts. Part 9 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. Today I decided to remove the rear bumper and spare tire. As it turns out, a 3/8 extension works great for lowering the spare tire on my Love. And now that the tire is off, we can remove the spare tire carrier. It's just 4 easy to get to bolts, and luckily they weren't rusted at all. Although I can't really say the same for the ones holding on the bumper, because I broke one, and then another. One more bolt, and now the left side of the bumper is free. And now onto the right side where I broke yet another bolt. And after some choice swear words, I was able to get this last bolt out, and then wiggle the bumper off. And now it's looking good, except for that dent. Me being the expert body man I am, I hammered it out. And that's the job done. Thanks for watching. Don't forget about extended version videos on my YouTube channel, and stay tuned for part 10. Part 10 of turning my 1980 Chevy Love from this into this. So while we're waiting on parts in the mail, I decided to tear apart the engine for the Love. I started with the accessory drive, which was actually very simple, and then the intake and coil packs. I then took off the driver's side header, valve cover, and then the rocker arm assembly. Then I moved over to the passenger side and did the exact same process. I also made sure to lay out all my parts side per side so it doesn't get mixed up. Then removed the knock sensors and valley pan, followed by all the cylinder head bolts. I then removed the cylinder head to confirm this is in fact a 5.3. Pulled the lifters, driver's side cylinder head, and now we're left with a short block. But we're not done yet. I want to see how those rod bearings look. So we flipped it over, took off the oil pan, the windage tray, and the pickup tube. And I even found a cut-up O-ring inside the oil pump. Luckily, it was never ran like this. I removed the pistons, rods, and bearings, and the rods and bearings were in great condition, so that's a job done. Thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to check out my Instagram and YouTube, link in bio, and stay tuned for part 11.